right. Thank you, everyone, for being here, you Facebook and YouTubers and all of our congregation that's out there now that is listening. We really appreciate you being here. And so let's start this morning with a little bit of humor, some house jokes. Okay, so did you know that housekeepers aren't born, naturally born? They're made. Thank you, thank you. And how does a penguin build a house? He igloos it together. Okay. I picked these jokes out personally. Last one. Okay. Just to keep you in suspense. So there was a man, and he grew a cucumber so big that he could make it into his home. This guy lived in Kima, of course. And this big old thunderstorm came, and it had all this seawater get into his home. So you know what happened to the man? He Mary Ellen, he went into a real pickle. Thank you. I know. So how many of you, talking about houses, how many of you have ever built a house or done some reconstruction on a house, that kind of thing? Just about everyone's raising their hand. You guys out there, how many of you? I want you to participate in this. Okay, so would you build a house without a design or a plan? Probably not. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to get one thing. My plan, my clicker. So would you build a house without a plan? If you were taking a trip and you didn't know how to get there, would you go without a map? Probably not. Now remember we used to use paper maps? Now we use Google Maps, don't we? So, and then here's the third question. Do you ever wander through life and just let the currents of life pull you? And sometimes those currents are a little bit negative. So do you go through life? Sometimes we go through life thinking about the past, or we're thinking about the future, but are we really ever thinking in the present? And so today we are going to talk about thinking about what stream, what current of life you're going through. And if you're going down a current, we're going to start changing the current. If you're going down a negative current, we're going to start moving, because we're going to be thinking about how to design your life, how to design your day. I'm speaking from the book, A New Design for Living, and this was written by Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes was the founder of Center for Spiritual Living, which used to be called Science of Mind. And Science of Mind and Unity are very similar in their belief systems. And so he published this a year before his transition, and so it's almost a culmination of his works. Now, one thing also is in the books, in all of his teachings, he teaches us the oneness that we have with the divine. And he teaches us in a way that we can use it in our daily life. Because we want to take these teachings, and as our tagline says, we want to live a relevant spirituality now. So that is why we are taking these teachings. So I encourage you to take whatever our talk is today and go through it in your daily life. Because these teachings are reminding us of who we are. Who are we? We are divine beings. We have the essence of God, but we are using a source that is so much greater. You know, I know that there is one thing that is always constant, that is always happening. Can you think of what that one thing is? Change. Change is the one thing that is always happening rapidly. And now with the pandemic, it seems like we're in a constant state of flux, doesn't it? It reminds me, so sometimes I'm watching TV, and we've been watching Mad Men a little bit on TV, and you see those men and those women, and they're in an airport and they're smoking a cigarette. Or you see them in a small room or an office room and they're smoking, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that was a long time ago. And I start to think, I'm wondering if 10 years from now, when I see on TV 2 total strangers running up and hugging each other, am I going to go, is this pre-pandemic? That must have been pre-pandemic. So we are in a lot of change. And change is hard. And I, of course, like every one of you, would wish that we didn't have the pandemic. Yet, I wouldn't want to live in a world that doesn't change. Okay? It reminds me of a movie that I like. I do watch a lot of TV. But the movie is, how many of you heard of Groundhog Day? Have any of you seen Groundhog Day? So some of you know the storyline. For those of you that don't, the storyline is you have Bill Murray, who plays this grouchy newscaster. And he wakes up every single day, and nothing changes about that day except him. So he can talk differently, he can act differently, but nothing else changes. And so I wouldn't want to live in that world. Now, I'm not going to give the ending to the story, to the movie, but I can tell you, if you haven't watched it, from a metaphysical standpoint, it has a great meaning, and so I think you will enjoy it. So Groundhog Day is just an example that we wouldn't really want to live in an unchanging world. And then the question might be, why does the world keep changing? The world keeps changing because the world is a living, breathing essence. The source is a living, breathing essence that is growing. And within all of the changes that happen to you, there is something that is ever unchanging, ever unchanging. And we can call that the unchanging, divine mind, universe, spirit, whatever words you might use. But we know that this word universe, divine mind, God, is unchanging. And also what is unchanging is we know that it is present with you. It is a part of you. And we know that we can trust in that power of spirit. Should we be afraid of change? No. Are we afraid of change? Yes. I know I'm afraid of change. And all of us have sort of sometimes a hot button of what we fear in change. We might have more negative thoughts of that one little thing. So when you get into that one thing that you get fearful about, how do you get out of that? It might be financial problems, it might be health problems, it might be relationship problems, okay? And we get into that fearful mode. How do we get out of the fearful mode? By being grateful. So whenever you get into a fearful mode in any part of your life, if you can find something that you're grateful for, you cannot be in a fear state and be grateful at the same time. Reverend Farrell Mann said those words. So you can't be in those two states at the same time. And then I would ask that you might focus in when you're in a fearful state also on this thought. Know that your highest good is manifesting right here and now, even though you can't see it with your 5 senses, and that it may not be on the time frame that you think it should be in. But always know that your highest good is being created. And when we are resistant to change, You know what the other thing is that we become resistant to? We become resistant to knowing the divine that we are. We become resistant to recognizing that there is a source that is more powerful, that we can live and breathe and enjoy life. You know, that is the essence. We need to enjoy life. We need to find joy in the everyday. That is living a spiritual life. And how do we find joy? How do we find joy? We have to go look for it. That's the first place. And with the pandemic, we have found some creative people that find joy in a very special way. So Ann Kaywood is a congregant here and a very active volunteer also. And she was telling me about a Facebook page. And the Facebook page is called, "What Do You See From Your Window?" And what this Facebook page is made for is for people who choose to stay at home and be isolated or need to be isolated for some reason. And so they take pictures of what they see from their window outside. And some of those pictures might be animals or other people or rainbow. And what does this Facebook page do? It brings a smile to other people that are looking at it. It brings a little bit of joy into someone's life. It makes us find and look for joy in the little things as well as the big things. Joe, my husband, he just loves to look at trees. He loves to look at how the branches are and the foundation of the tree, and that brings him joy. I have a good friend of mine, and she loves to watch birds. And when she was living in Houston, she used to go out into Galveston and gather people and take them on a bird watching. And I find joy, and I like to cook. And so when I make a recipe that tastes really good, I find great joy in that. And so what can you find joy in? What can you find joy in? And the more joy that you find in you, what happens? You give out that joy. There is no selfishness in finding joy, happiness, abundance in your life. None. If you're looking at the sun and feeling the warm rays, you are not taking away from anyone else. If you're looking at the beautiful stars in the evening, okay, everyone else can experience those beautiful stars. And so if you're finding more abundance, happiness, health in your life, it is not selfish. In a way, it's almost the opposite, because you are filling yourself up with this joy and this abundance. And what do? Just by your very presence, you are sharing that joy. You're sharing that happiness. You're sharing that love. So we are talking today about how to design your life, how to design your day, how to create a more joyful and deeper meaning each and every day. I have been talking a lot to the Kaywoods, and so Tom Kaywood reminded me of this sentence, is that sometimes we go through life and we're making plans, okay, instead of living. I'm not saying that right. So what I'm saying, though, is do you go through life making plans instead of living? What we want to do is design our life and think our thoughts, and those are going to be our plans, okay? So why do we get up and we don't focus in on the positives? Because we just have to think about it. So I encourage you now to think about, as you first get up out of bed, how can I focus in on the positive? Before your feet hit the floor, how can I make this day the experiences that I want? because we have the power to access source and change our experiences through our thoughts. Is it easy to do? Is it easy to change our thoughts? It can be, okay, it can be. But it also can be difficult to do because we have our subconscious, we have our childhood background. Oh, I have low self-esteem because that's the way I was raised. My parents didn't speak to me. Sometimes we don't even know our negative thoughts that are running in our subconscious, do we? Okay. Or we might have the excuse, that's the way I am. I am just a negative person. So that's a lot. How can we change our subconscious thoughts? So I have a metaphor for you. I don't know if all our Facebook people can see this, but this is a little bit of inky water. Okay, I don't know if you can see the ink. So if you think of the inky water as our negative thoughts, and you think of clear water as your positive thoughts, your prayers, what happens to the inky water? Sometimes it takes a few denials and affirmations to clear up those negative thoughts. But what happens? We get clear water. And so that is what you want to do with your thoughts. You want to start having positive thoughts. You want to start having positive prayers. And it will clear. It will clear. And it will make your experiences in life manifest. I'm going to read you 3 fundamental statements. And the first is, we are never separate from God. We are never separate from Source. The second is, we have direct access to that Source through our thoughts. And the third is that we through our prayers is how we access divine mind. And when I say prayers, our thoughts are a form of prayer. Prayer goes much deeper, but our thoughts are a form of prayer. Okay. I want to read you the statement from the eminent biologist. Oh, I don't have my glasses. Okay. I can read the statement. If God is what everywhere brings form and order out of randomness, and finally molds dead matter into something that gives birth to spirit in man, he or she can well be worshipped as sovereign of the universe. If man, however, humble, shares this universal spirit, he should be able to make contact with it by that process of communion, which through the ages has been known as prayer. And what I wanted to know was who, the eminent psychologist Edmund Sinnott said that. And so what that is saying is that through the power of prayer, we can access that source. And we have to keep that we are being humble through it. It is our mind, but we are accessing it through divine mind. And so sometimes we worry, but it is more than our mind. It is divine mind that we are accessing this source. We often think of how wonderful divine mind is when we think of the works of Beethoven. He had whole symphonies in his head, and his biggest problem was to write them down on a piece of paper before they left his mind. And so I'm going to tell you about a story that I have about songwriting. When we were planning, Joe and I were planning for our wedding, I have always wanted to be a songwriter. And so I decided I wanted to write a song for our wedding. And I had called a friend and asked him if he would write the music for it. So I sat down one day and I'm writing away, and it takes me a few hours, and I send it over to my musician friend, Darren, and about 2 hours later, he calls me and he says, "Kirti, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at writing music." Well, the subline was, "Your song really stinks." So life is what it is, and so I go, "Okay, thank you for trying." About 2 days later, I'm sitting in the car, and all of a sudden, have you ever had that where something is just downloaded into you? Yeah? Have you guys had it out there? And literally an entire song was downloaded into me. I was writing it on every single piece of paper I have. Part of the song was written on a piece of tissue. I was writing so fast. I called my friend. I sent the song over. I put it on a Word document, sent it over. Within 3 hours, I think it was between 3 hours, within 3 hours, Darren, my friend, had written the music to it, had played it on YouTube. He had his mom watch the YouTube. She said that it was the best song she had ever seen him create and play. And so it was just an amazing thing. Darren went on to play it at our wedding. And so it's just how divine mind flows. Now, why am I saying this? Is my song like Beethoven? No, but my song's very good. But why I'm saying this is that I am using the same source as Beethoven did. Okay? I am using the same source as Madame Curie. I'm using the same source as Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mandela, because that source lives in each and every one of you. That source is the same source that lives in anyone that you admire. And so that source allows you to create and design your day and your life. Donald Andrews said, "The greatest thing which science does for us is to reaffirm the reality of spirit." Okay? So I have the same mind working as Einstein does. And Einstein, who took and reaffirmed spirit through so many things, because he knew that his formulas were correct, even though he couldn't prove them. Okay. And so what I am saying in this talk is that you have the power to design your life. You have the power to experience, and you want to experience the thoughts. You want to have the thoughts that you want to experience. So let's take the metaphor of a house, okay? The house, if we take our thoughts, the foundation of the house is our oneness with spirit. The beams of our house is that we can access spirit through our thoughts. The roof of the house is that all things are possible. All things are possible through the God that lives within each of us. Marianne Williamson said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." So this week, watch your thoughts and experience what you want to experience in this life through your thoughts. Think big, knowing you are the container for the fullness of life. Okay? What do you want to fill your life up with? If it's more joy, what thoughts can you experience to have more joy in your life? If you want happiness, what thoughts do you want to experience to have more happiness? And if you want love, love with one another, love with the oneness of the environment, one with the oneness of spirit, think those thoughts that design and create every day of your life. And so it is. Amen and yes. Thank you.